Daddy, please don't leave me. Not
Pull
like
yourself
this.
together.
Not today.
This display is
Those
unnecessary.
were the last words Maya Sinclair whispered into her father's chest as he took his final breath. A janitor. A man who mopped floors for 32 years. A man who ate ramen for dinner so his daughter could have dance
to you, Miss
lessons.
Blackwell.
But here's what nobody knew.
You actually
24
believe
hours
this
after
changes
burying
anything,
him,
girl?
Maya's husband Derek stood at her father's graveside, dirt still fresh on the casket, and said 7 words that shattered her world. Maya, I want a divorce.
Derek, you
Then
need
he
to sign the
walked away
settlement right now.
with his mistress,
We have no other options
the woman
left.
wearing a red dress to a funeral. But what Derek didn't know, what his mistress didn't know, what even Maya didn't know until she opened that envelope her dying father pressed into her hands. Her daddy, the humble janitor who couldn't afford new shoes, was secretly worth $4.8 billion. And he left every penny to her. But getting it, that would require Maya to fight the grandmother who wanted her destroyed, the husband who wanted half in a conspiracy that went darker than anyone imagined. This is not a fairy tale. This is a war. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and goodbye. Maya Sinclair had been sitting in that same plastic chair for 16 hours straight, her hand wrapped around her father's weathered fingers, watching the monitors measure out his final moments in beeps and numbers that kept getting slower, quieter, weaker with each passing minute. She was 32 years old, 7 months pregnant, and about to become an orphan. Henry Sinclair lay beneath white sheets that made his dark skin look gray, almost translucent. The cancer had stolen 40 pounds from his frame in 3 months. At 68, he'd always been strong, vital, the kind of man who could work a double shift mopping hospital floors and still come home with enough energy to help Maya grade papers. Now he looked like a leaf in autumn, ready to fall. This was the man who had taught her to ride a bike on Saturday mornings before his janitor shift started at 6 a.m. The man who showed up to every parent-teacher conference in his work uniform, smelling like pine cleaner and effort, sitting in those tiny chairs meant for children with such quiet dignity that it didn't matter what he wore or how tired he looked. This was the man who told her every single night before bed, from the time she was old enough to understand words until the day she moved out for college, "You are brilliant. You are worthy. You are loved beyond measure. Don't let anyone ever tell you different." And now he was leaving her. The cancer had come fast and vicious, like a thief in the night. Pancreatic stage 4. By the time they caught it, by the time anyone thought to look, it had already spread everywhere. The doctors had given him 6 months with aggressive treatment. He'd made it barely 12 weeks. Maya's phone buzzed in her lap, breaking the sacred silence of the room. She glanced at the screen through tears that hadn't stopped falling for hours. Derek, her husband of 4 years, the father of the baby kicking inside her right now, as if the tiny life could sense her mother's distress. His text read, "Still at the hospital? My presentation got moved to tomorrow morning. Going to stay at Dave's place tonight to prep. Don't wait up." Maya stared at the words, read them again, and again. Her father was dying. Right now, this very moment. The monitors were slowing, the numbers dropping, his breath rattling in his chest like wind through dead leaves. And her husband was worried about a sales presentation. She didn't respond. She couldn't find words that wouldn't be screaming. She turned the phone face down on her lap and squeezed her father's hand tighter, as if she could anchor him to this world through sheer force of love. His eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were unfocused, lost somewhere between this world and whatever came next. Then they found her face, and something cleared in them. Recognition, love, and something else she couldn't name. "Maya," he whispered. His voice was like paper tearing, fragile and final. "My beautiful girl, I'm here, Daddy." The words came out broken, shattered on the rocks of her grief. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Need to tell you something." He struggled to breathe, the oxygen machine hissing and clicking beside him like some mechanical prayer. "Important. Listen carefully." "Save your strength," she pleaded. "Please, we can talk when you're better." The doctors said, "No, baby." His grip tightened on her hand with surprising force, like he was reaching up from the grave already to hold on to her. "No more pretending. This is it. We both know this is it. And you need to know everything before I go." Maya's tears fell faster, dropping onto their intertwined hands like rain. Daddy, please, don't say that. Don't. When I'm gone, he continued, each word costing him something vital. You need to find Walter. Walter Pemberton. He's a lawyer in New York City. An old friend, older than you know. He'll explain everything. But Maya, he paused to catch his breath, his chest heaving with the effort. You're going to have to fight for it. I couldn't just give it to you. That would have been too easy. You'll understand why when the time comes. He released her hand just long enough to reach under his pillow. His fingers, thin and trembling, pulled out a worn leather journal. The cover was soft from years of handling, the corners rounded, the binding cracked. This was your mother's, he said, pressing it into Maya's hands. And then it was mine. The truth is in here. All of it. Everything I should have told you years ago but couldn't. Everything I was protecting you from. And protecting for you. I don't understand. Maya clutched the journal like a lifeline. Daddy, you're scaring me. What truth? What couldn't you tell me? Promise me. His eyes found hers, and in them she saw something she'd never seen before in her father's face. Fear. Not fear of dying, she realized. Fear of leaving her unprepared. Promise you won't tell anyone until you understand. Read the journal, call Walter, learn who you really are. And then, who I really am? What does that mean? Promise me you won't tell Derek. His voice gained sudden strength, fueled by something urgent. Especially not Derek. Not until you understand. Maya's breath caught. Why? He's my husband. Because I see him, baby. I've been watching him for months now. I see how he looks at you now that you're pregnant, now that I'm sick. Like you're a burden instead of a blessing. Like he's calculating what you're worth. Daddy, that's not... But even as she protested, something cold bloomed in her chest. Because hadn't she felt it too? The distance, the impatience. The way Derek looked at her swollen belly like it was an inconvenience rather than a miracle. I know men, Henry said. I've known men like him my whole life. Charm on the outside, calculation on the inside. I thought maybe I was wrong. I prayed I was wrong, but a dying man sees clearly, baby girl. The fog lifts at the end, and I see him now for what he is. The monitors were changing their rhythm, the beeps spreading further apart. A nurse appeared in the doorway, checked the readings, and her face told Maya everything she didn't want to know. Mr. Sinclair, the nurse said gently, do you want me to call anyone? A chaplain? Family? No. Henry's voice was barely a whisper now. No machines, no strangers, just my daughter, just Maya. She's all the family I need. The nurse nodded, her eyes glistening, and quietly backed out of the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Henry looked at Maya, and despite everything, despite the pain and the fear and the fading light in his eyes, he smiled. You know what the best day of my life was? Maya shook her head, unable to speak past the sob lodged in her throat like a stone. The day your mama put you in my arms. You were so tiny, Maya. So tiny and so perfect. 6 pounds, 3 ounces. You had these little fists, and you were waving them around like you were ready to fight the whole world. He laughed, and the laugh became a cough, and the cough became a wheeze, but he kept talking. And I looked at you, this perfect little person, and I thought, this is it. This is what I was born for. Not money, not power, not all the things my family tried to make me want. Just you, just loving you, just protecting you, just watching you become the extraordinary woman I always knew you'd be. Mama. Maya's voice cracked on the word. Her mother had died giving birth to her. 32 years of wondering, of guilt, of an empty space where a mother's love should have been. She was beautiful. Henry's eyes were distant now, seeing something Maya couldn't, seeing someone Maya had never known. Eleanor, your mother, she was a nurse, you know. That's how we met. She was taking care of my mother in the hospital, and I walked in and she looked to us at me, and it was like the whole world stopped spinning. He coughed again, harder this time. My family hated her, said she wasn't good enough, wasn't our kind of people. They gave me a choice, her or the inheritance, her or everything I'd been raised to want. Maya's head was spinning. Inheritance? Daddy, what inheritance? We don't have... I chose her, baby. His hand found hers again, gripping with fading strength. Every single time, I chose her. And when she died bringing you into this world, when the last thing she did on this earth was give me you, I chose you. I walked away from everything, changed my name, got a job mopping floors, and I never regretted it. Not for one single second. You're not making sense. Maya was crying so hard she could barely see. What are you talking about? What did you walk away from? But his breathing was getting shallower. The monitors were screaming their warnings now. A nurse rushed in, then another. Maya, listen to me. His voice was urgent, desperate. You are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless. I made sure of that. Everything I did for you. Remember that. Trust the plan. Trust Walter. And baby girl, yes, daddy, I'm here. Remember what I always told you. Never sign anything when you're emotional. Grief makes us agree to things we'd never accept with clear eyes. Promise me you'll wait 72 hours before any big decision. I promise, and one more thing. Anything. I love you more than all the money in the world. You are my greatest treasure. You always were. You always will be. His eyes closed. The machines flatlined. And just like that, between one heartbeat and the next, Maya's father was gone. She collapsed onto his chest, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but cling to his worn work shirt and breathe in the smell of him one last time. Irish Spring soap and coffee and love. The smell of her childhood. The smell of safety. The smell of home. She didn't hear the door open. Didn't hear the nurses come in. Didn't hear them gently, so gently, tell her it was time to let go. All she heard was the silence where her father's voice used to be. And in her pocket, her phone buzzed again. Derek, how's it going? 2 hours later, Maya sat alone in her father's tiny apartment. The building was old, the stairs creaked, the radiator clanked all winter long. But her father had lived here for 30 years, ever since Maya was 2 years old, and every corner held a memory. The threadbare couch where he'd held her through thunderstorms and heartbreaks and bad report cards. The kitchen table with the wobbly leg where he'd helped her with homework every night for 18 years, patient even when math made her cry. The window where he'd kept a single plant alive for decades, watering it faithfully every Sunday morning. His whole life fit into 500 square feet. And yet, sitting here surrounded by his things, Maya felt like she was drowning in the vastness of what she'd lost. She opened the leather journal with trembling hands. First page, a photograph tucked into the binding. Her parents' wedding day. Her mother, beautiful beyond words, laughing at something her father had said. She wore a simple white dress, nothing fancy, but she glowed like she'd swallowed the sun. And her father? Maya's breath caught. Her father wore a tuxedo, not a rental, not something borrowed. A custom-fitted, clearly expensive tuxedo that probably cost more than his entire annual salary as a janitor. Behind them, visible through what must have been a window, stood a mansion. Columns, fountains, manicured gardens, old money made visible. Maya had never seen this photograph before, had never known it existed. She turned to the last page of the journal. There, in her father's careful handwriting, was a name and phone number. Walter Pemberton, attorney at law. Pemberton and Associates, New York City. Call when I'm gone. Her phone rang, making her jump. Rachel Torres, her best friend since nursing school orientation 8 years ago, when Rachel had looked at Maya's nervous face and said, "You look like you need a drink. I know where they keep the good stuff. Want to commit a minor theft together?" They'd been inseparable ever since. "Hey, girl." Rachel's voice was warm, concerned. "I just got off shift. How's your dad doing?" "He's gone." Maya's voice didn't sound like her own. "Flat? Empty. Dead. He died an hour ago." "Oh, honey. Oh, Maya, I'm so sorry. I'm coming over right now. Is Derek there?" "No, work thing." A long pause. When Rachel spoke again, her voice was dangerous. "I'm sorry. What? His father-in-law is dying and he's doing a work thing?" "Was dying, is dead now. And he wasn't there, he had a presentation." Another pause. Longer this time. "Maya, if my man missed my father's last moments for a presentation, he'd need a doctor by the time I was done with him. And I'd need an alibi. It's fine, it's just..." Maya looked at the photograph again. Her father in that expensive tuxedo, the mansion in the background, the woman she'd never known glowing like the sun. Rachel, nothing makes sense right now. I don't know what I need. I'm coming over. Don't move. Don't do anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I'm at my dad's place. Then I'll be there in 15. Maya hung up and looked at the journal again. The photograph, the name, the number. What had her father been hiding all these years? And why had he waited until he was dying to tell her? The next 3 days passed in a blur of grief and funeral arrangements. Maya moved through it all like a ghost, doing what needed to be done, signing papers she couldn't focus on, talking to people whose faces she wouldn't remember. Rachel was there constantly, a steady presence at her side, handling the details Maya couldn't manage. Derek was Derek was around, sometimes, between work calls and client meetings and whatever else demanded his attention more than his grieving wife. On the morning they went to Morrison Family Funeral Home to finalize arrangements, Maya noticed something that would have bothered her more if she'd had any emotional bandwidth left. Derek kept checking his phone, every 30 seconds, every 20, sometimes multiple times in a row, smiling at whatever he saw on the screen, thumbing quick responses while the funeral director talked about casket options. "We have several packages available," Mr. Morrison said kindly. He was an older man, white hair and gentle eyes, who'd been handling families through their darkest moments for 40 years. The most basic starts at $3,000. That includes, Derek whistled through his teeth, $3,000 for a funeral. He shook his head. That's a lot for someone who was just a janitor. Maya flinched like he'd slapped her. He was my father. I know, babe. I'm just saying we need to be practical. Derek spread his hands, reasonable, rational, a man looking at the bottom line. Your dad didn't have much. Let's not go into debt over a funeral. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat delicately. Actually, there seems to be some confusion. He pulled up something on his computer, squinting at the screen. Mr. Henry Sinclair prepaid for his funeral arrangements 20 years ago. The premium package. The room went silent. What? Derek leaned forward, his salesman's face suddenly sharp with interest. Prepaid? Everything is covered, Mr. Morrison confirmed. The casket, the flowers, the reception hall, the burial plot, transportation, the memorial programs. He even specified the type of flowers. Yellow roses. He said they were his late wife's favorite. Maya's eyes filled with tears for the 100th time that day. Yellow roses. Her mother's favorite. Her father had remembered for 32 years, had planned for this moment 2 decades ago. How much? Derek asked. His voice strange. Did he pay? For all that? Mr. Morrison hesitated, clearly sensing something off in the question. The premium package at that time was $12,000. With the payment plan your father selected in interest, he paid a total of $18,000 over 10 years. Derek stared. $18,000? A janitor saved up $18,000 for a funeral? Mr. Morrison's gentle eyes hardened slightly. Mr. Sinclair was a man who planned ahead. He came in on his lunch breaks to make payments, always in compage, always on time. He told me once, the funeral director looked at Maya. He said he never wanted his daughter to worry about taking care of him at the end. He wanted to take care of her, even after he was gone. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but clutch Rachel's hand and try to breathe. That night, alone in the apartment she shared with Derek, who had gone to some client dinner he absolutely couldn't miss, Maya found herself scrolling through her phone. She couldn't sleep, couldn't close her eyes without seeing her father's face in those final moments. Couldn't stop hearing his warning about Derek. I see how he looks at you, like you're a burden instead of a blessing. She opened Instagram, mindless scrolling, anything to quiet the noise in her head. That's when she saw it. Derek had been tagged in a photo, posted 3 weeks ago. She'd missed it somehow, too consumed with hospital visits and fear and hoping against hope that her father would somehow recover. The image showed her husband at a restaurant she'd never been to. The caption said Chicago. A business trip, Derek had told her. Very boring. You'd hate it. He was sitting in a booth, a glass of wine in front of him, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up, relaxed, happy. And next to him, pressed close against his side, laughing at something he had said, was a woman Maya had never seen before. She was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that came from money and time and professional attention. Blonde hair perfectly styled, red dress perfectly fitted, smile perfectly confident. The caption read, "Business trips are better with the right company." Winking emoji. The account belonged to someone named Brooke Weston. Maya's hands shook as she clicked on the profile. VP of Sales at MedTech Solutions. Derek's company. His boss. The profile was public, full of photos of expensive restaurants and luxury vacations and designer clothes. Success and ambition made visible. And there, 3 photos down, was another picture of Derek. His arm around Brooke's waist, her hand on his chest. Both of them smiling at the camera like they'd won something precious. Posted 6 weeks ago, while Maya was spending every night at the hospital watching her father die, while she was pregnant and terrified and lonely and desperate for comfort. She scrolled further. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely control the screen. More photos. Derek and Brooke at a concert. She'd asked him to go with her to see their favorite band that same week, and he'd said he was too tired. Derek and Brooke at a beach. She'd suggested a weekend getaway to reconnect, and he'd said work was too crazy. Derek and Brooke at what looked like a hotel room, though the photo was cropped carefully. The comments were worse. "Finally," wrote someone named Jessica. "You two are goals," wrote another. "About time he wised up," wrote a third. The affair had been going on for months. 8 months at least, judging by the dates. Her entire pregnancy. While Maya was growing a new life inside her, while she was exhausted and sick and worried about her father, while she was trying to hold their marriage together despite Derek's increasing coldness and distance, he was building a whole new life with someone else. Maya ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. Then she sat on the cold tile floor, her pregnant belly pressing against her knees, and sobbed until her throat was raw. When she finally stopped shaking, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen, her face was pale, her hair was tangled and dirty because when had she last taken a proper shower? She looked exactly like what she was, a broken woman who'd lost everything and didn't even know it yet. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. But she wasn't ready to see. Not yet. Tomorrow she had to bury her father. Everything else would have to wait. The next morning, Maya confronted Derek, sort of. He was making coffee in the kitchen, humming to himself, checking his phone with that small smile she now recognized for what it was. Derek. She kept her voice carefully neutral, her hands under the table so he wouldn't see them shake. "Who is Brooke Weston?" He didn't even flinch. Didn't miss a beat. "My boss, VP of Sales." "Why, there are photos of you two on Instagram. You look close." He laughed. The sound scraped against her skin like sandpaper. "That's just work stuff, babe. She's touchy with everyone. You know how corporate people are, always doing the photo ops, building the brand." Derek brought his coffee to the table, sat down across from her. "Don't be paranoid. You're hormonal." Hormonal. He'd been using that word a lot lately. Every time she questioned his late nights. Every time she asked why he seemed so distant. Every time she cried for what felt like no reason. "You're just hormonal, babe. The pregnancy is messing with your emotions." "It's nothing," he said. Now, leaning over to kiss her forehead, the gesture felt like a dismissal, like a pat on the head. "Focus on the funeral today, okay? I'll be right there with you. We'll get through this together." But even as he said the words, his phone buzzed, and she saw his eyes flick to it, saw the corner of his mouth twitch up. And she knew with absolute certainty that he was lying. But today she had to bury her father. Everything else would have to wait. The church was small, white, and filled with yellow roses. Maya had insisted on that. Yellow roses everywhere, on the casket, on the altar, lining the aisles, filling every vase until the whole space smelled like sunshine and memory. Her mother's favorite. Her father had remembered for 32 years. The least Maya could do was remember too. About 40 people had come. Teachers who'd worked alongside Henry Sinclair at Millbrook Elementary for decades. Neighbors who remembered his kindness. The school principal, Mrs. Chen, who was crying openly because Henry had quietly paid for 3 students' lunch accounts for years, never telling anyone, never asking for recognition. He just didn't want any kid to go hungry, Mrs. Chen had told Maya before the service. He said he knew what that felt like, and no child in his school would ever feel it if he could help it. These were the people who had known her father, really known him. Not the man in the expensive tuxedo from the photograph, just Henry. The janitor with the kind eyes and the gentle hands who always had time for a struggling kid or a worried parent or a colleague having a hard day. Maya stood at the front of the church and tried to deliver the eulogy she'd written at 3 in the morning, hands shaking, tears streaming. "My father," she began, and her voice broke on the second word. She started again. "My father taught me that worth isn't measured in what you have. It's measured in who you are, in how you treat people, in the kindness you show when no one's watching and you'll never get credit for it. He worked double shifts his whole life, mopping floors, cleaning bathrooms, jobs most people think are beneath them. And he did it with dignity, with pride, because he knew something that took me 32 years to understand." She paused, wiped her eyes, looked at the casket covered in yellow roses. "There's no such thing as unimportant work. There are only unimportant attitudes. My father treated every floor he mopped like it mattered, every toilet he cleaned, every spill he wiped up, because someone was going to walk on that floor. Someone was going to use that bathroom. And my father wanted them to feel cared for." Maya's voice steadied as she continued. "He showed up to every school event in his work uniform, never ashamed, never apologizing. He'd sit in those tiny chairs at parent-teacher conferences, smelling like pine cleaner, and every teacher would tell him the same thing. They'd say, 'Mr. Sinclair, Maya is a delight,' and he'd beam like I'd won the Nobel Prize." A ripple of sad laughter moved through the congregation. "He told me every night before bed, from the time I could understand words until the day I moved out, 'You are brilliant. You are worthy, you are loved beyond measure.' Every single night, without fail. Even when I was a teenager and pretended to be too cool for bedtime rituals. Even when I rolled my eyes and said, 'I know, Dad.'" She smiled through her tears. "I didn't know. Not really. Not until now, not until he's gone and I'm standing here trying to put into words what he meant to me, what he taught me, who he was." She looked at Derek in the front row. He was on his phone, smiling at the screen. Maya's throat closed up. She had to stop, had to breathe, had to find the strength to finish. "My father was the best man I've ever known," she said finally, "and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of how much he loved me." She stepped down from the podium and took her seat. Derek didn't look up from his phone. The cemetery was beautiful in a way that felt like cruelty. Green grass, blue sky, yellow roses covering the mahogany casket. A perfect autumn day for burying the person who'd loved Maya most in all the world. The preacher was saying words, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, the promises of resurrection and reunion that were supposed to bring comfort. Maya heard none of it. She stood at the edge of her father's grave, her black dress too tight across her pregnant belly, watching the casket begin its slow descent into the earth. That's when she heard it. Tires on gravel, a car pulling up to the cemetery. The wrong kind of car for a funeral. Something sleek and black and expensive. A Mercedes. The door opened, and Brooke Weston stepped out. She was wearing a red dress. A red dress. To a funeral. Maya watched in disbelief, in horror, as the woman walked across the grass toward the mourners, walking directly toward Derek, not bothering to be subtle, not bothering to pretend. "We need to go," Brooke said, her voice carrying across the silent cemetery. "The lawyers are ready." Derek stepped away from Maya's side without a word of explanation. "Lawyers," Maya heard her own voice, distant and strange. "What lawyers?" Derek turned to face her. And in that moment, his expression shifted. The mask he'd been wearing for months, years maybe, finally slipped away. What she saw underneath was a stranger. "Maya, I want a divorce." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered, would have fallen if Rachel hadn't grabbed her arm. "I'm sorry for the timing," Derek continued, his voice calm, rehearsed. like he'd practiced this speech in front of a mirror. But Brooke's attorney says we need to file before any complications. Complications? Maya couldn't process what she was hearing. What complications? If your dad left anything. Derek shrugged. I need to protect my interests. Protect your... Maya looked around at the mourners, at the open grave, at the casket not yet fully lowered into the ground. My father isn't even buried yet. The dirt isn't on his coffin yet. And you're talking about your interest? Be reasonable about this, babe. The endearment sounded obscene in his mouth now. Let's not make it harder than it has to be. Rachel stepped forward. Her whole body was vibrating with rage. Are you out of your mind? She was shouting. She didn't care. Her father just died. The body is right there. And you're asking for a divorce? Brooke smirked. The expression transformed her beautiful face into something ugly. Oh, honey, she said to Maya, her voice dripping with condescension. I think he's finally coming to his senses. You understand, don't you? Some men need a woman who can match their ambition, someone who can help them grow. You're sweet, really. You are, but sweet doesn't close deals. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now, not in front of everyone. But it was happening. Derek was taking Brooke's hand. The funeral director had stopped mid-motion, shovel frozen in the air, staring in disbelief. The mourners were gasping, whispering, some of them filming on their phones. And her father's casket was still descending into the earth. The papers will be at our apartment, Derek said. Sign them and we can make this quick and painless for everyone. They walked away together. Toward the Mercedes. They got in. The engine started. They drove away, and Maya collapsed. She fell to her knees beside her father's grave, dirt and grass staining her black dress. Her whole body shaking with sobs so violent they felt like seizures. Rachel was there immediately, arms around her, whispering things Maya couldn't hear. Mrs. Patterson, her father's colleague of 30 years, knelt beside them. Her lined face was wet with tears. Your daddy told me something last month, she said quietly. He said, Dorothy, when the wolves come for Maya, she's going to surprise everyone, including herself. Maya looked up at her through the blurs of tears. I don't understand any of this. Nothing makes sense. Mrs. Patterson pressed something into her hand, a business card worn at the edges. He gave me this, said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you called this number. Walter Pemberton. She squeezed Maya's hand. He said Walter would explain everything. Maya looked at the card, the same name, the same number. Third time now. Her father had been preparing for this. He'd known something was coming. But what? Come on, Rachel said, helping her to her feet. Let's get you out of here. They walked toward Rachel's car, past the staring mourners, past the whispered judgments, past the grave that would be filled in without Maya there to see it. At the edge of the cemetery, Maya looked back one last time. Yellow roses, blue sky, a good man in the ground, and a daughter who was just beginning to realize she had no idea who she really was. 3 days after the funeral, Maya sat in Rachel's guest bedroom, staring at her phone. She'd been staring at it for 2 hours. The business card lay on the bedside table. Walter Pemberton, attorney at law, New York City. Her father's final instruction. Find Walter. He'll explain everything. But every time Maya reached for the phone, her hand stopped halfway. Because some part of her understood that once she made this call, nothing would ever be the same. She thought about the photograph in the journal. Her father in that expensive tuxedo. The mansion in the background. The woman who died giving her life. She thought about his words. I walked away from everything. Changed my name. Got a job mopping floors. Walked away from what? Rachel appeared in the doorway with a cup of tea and a determined expression. Okay, girl, it's been 3 days. You need to make that call. I know, so make it. Maya looked at the phone, at the business card, at her best friend. What if I don't like what he tells me? Then you don't like it, but you still need to know. Rachel sat down on the bed. Your dad didn't give you that number as a joke. He didn't spend his last breath talking about some lawyer for fun. Whatever this is, it meant everything to him. And if it meant everything to him, it means everything to you. She was right. Maya knew she was right. She picked up the phone, dialed. It rang twice before a man answered. His voice was warm, cultured, with the kind of polish that comes from expensive education and old money. Pemberton and Associates. I'm looking for Walter Pemberton. My name is Maya Sinclair. Henry Sinclair was my father. He told me to call when he passed. Walter's voice softened with genuine sorrow. Yes, I've been waiting for your call, Maya. I'm so sorry about Henry. He was my best friend for 30 years. I've been checking my phone every hour, hoping and dreading. Your best friend? We were roommates at Princeton, before he walked away from everything. A pause. Can you come to New York? Tomorrow, if possible. There's a great deal to explain, and I'm afraid none of it is simple. 2 days later, Maya stepped out of a cab onto a Manhattan sidewalk. The building in front of her was all glass and steel, reaching toward a sky she could barely see. 40 floors of power and money. The offices of Pemberton and Associates occupied the 38th floor. When the elevator doors opened, Maya found herself in a reception area that screamed old money. Not new money, not tech money, the kind of money that came with history, leather chairs worn soft with decades of use, oil paintings of stern men in dark suits, a receptionist in pearls who looked at Maya's Target maternity dress with barely concealed judgment. Miss Sinclair? The receptionist's voice thawed slightly. Right this way. Mr. Pemberton is expecting you. She was led down a hallway lined with more portraits. At the end, a heavy wooden door. The receptionist knocked once and opened it. Walter Pemberton was exactly what his name suggested. Silver hair, immaculately styled, patrician features, a suit that probably cost more than Maya's car. He looked like he'd stepped out of one of those portraits in the hallway. But his eyes were kind, and when he stood to greet her, his smile was warm and genuine and sad. You look just like Eleanor, he said softly. Your mother. Same eyes, same way of tilting your head when you're uncertain about something. You knew my mother? I was at their wedding. He gestured to a leather chair. Please sit. We have a great deal to discuss, and I suspect you haven't eaten properly in days. He was right. She hadn't. She'd been surviving on Rachel's cooking and sheer willpower. Walter pressed a button on his desk. Helen, please bring in the lunch tray. And tea. Lots of tea. Over the next 3 hours, Maya's entire understanding of her life shattered and reformed into something unrecognizable. Walter started from the beginning. Your father was born Henry Blackwell III, he said, heir to Blackwell Energy, one of the largest privately held energy companies in America. Oil, natural gas, and increasingly renewable investments. The family has been in this business for 4 generations. Maya shook her head. That's impossible. My father was a janitor. He mopped the floors for 30 years. By choice, Mom. Walter slid a photograph across the desk. Another wedding photo, but this one was professional. Her parents standing in front of that mansion she'd seen in the journal. Henry walked away at 24 to marry your mother, Walter continued. Eleanor was a nurse at the hospital where Margaret, your grandmother, was being treated for heart trouble. Henry had been estranged from his father since college, but he still visited his mother. One day he walked into her hospital room and saw Eleanor adjusting the IV line. He told me later it was like the whole world stopped. Maya stared at the photograph. Her parents, so young, so happy. They fell in love, Walter said. Quickly, completely. And the Blackwell family did not approve. Your mother was, well, she was black, she was poor, she was a working nurse instead of a debutante from the right family. She was everything they didn't want for their only son and heir. Maya's stomach tightened. Her father had never talked about race, never made it an issue, but she'd always known on some level that her mixed heritage set her apart. They gave him an ultimatum, Walter continued. Eleanor or the inheritance, Eleanor or the family, she or everything he'd been raised to want. He chose her, every single time, without hesitation. He changed his name to Sinclair, Eleanor's maiden name, got a job mopping floors at a hospital, moved into a tiny apartment, walked away from billions of dollars and never looked back. But the money, Maya said, her voice shaking. If he walked away from the inheritance, he walked away from his family, not from his trust fund. Walter smiled grimly. The Blackwells learned generations ago to protect their wealth from emotional decisions. Henry's trust was set up so that he couldn't be disinherited, no matter what he did. He could refuse to touch it, and he did, but he couldn't be cut off from it entirely. So all these years, he's been one of the wealthiest men in America, living in a 500 square foot apartment, working double shifts, making sure you never wanted for anything important while teaching you that important doesn't mean expensive. Walter slid another document across the desk. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property holdings, numbers that made Maya's eyes blur. He managed it all remotely, through me mostly, grew the trust from a few hundred million to, he paused. The current value of your father's estate is $4.8 billion. Maya couldn't breathe. Billion, with a B. That's your inheritance. Walter's voice was gentle. But Maya, there's a complication. Of course there is. She laughed and the sound came out broken. There's always a complication. Your father set up a conditional inheritance. He wanted you to be ready, to prove you could handle this responsibility before it landed in your lap. What kind of conditions? 3 requirements. Walter ticked them off. First, you must demonstrate financial competency through a board review. Second, you must maintain moral standing. No criminal record, no public scandals that would damage the family reputation. Third, you must be approved by a majority of the Blackwell family board members. Maya's heart sank. Board members? Your grandmother is still alive. Margaret Blackwell, she's 82 years old and controls 51% of Blackwell Energy. She also controls the board. Walter's expression darkened. And she never forgave your father for leaving. She'll never approve me. That's why your father made it conditional. Walter leaned forward. He told me something once, years ago. He said, Maya needs to know she can stand on her own before she has the power to lift others. He didn't want to just hand you a fortune, Maya. He wanted you to earn it, to fight for it, to become the person who deserves it. Maya looked down at the documents. $4.8 billion, more money than she could comprehend. And standing between her and that fortune was a grandmother who hated her very existence, an ex-husband who wanted half of everything, a world she didn't understand and had never been prepared for. Her father had protected her from all of this, had raised her normal, happy, grounded, had let her believe she was the daughter of a janitor instead of an heiress, and now he expected her to fight for something she'd never known she had. What do I do? She asked finally. Walter smiled. Something fierce and proud entered his eyes. First, we prepare you for the board meeting. Then we file counter motions against your ex-husband's divorce petition. Since you're legally entitled to half of nothing, his claims are baseless. And then what? Then we show the world what Henry Sinclair's daughter is made of. 6 weeks of preparation, 6 weeks of learning terms like fiduciary duty and portfolio allocation and trust administration. 6 weeks of mock board meetings with Walter drilling her on every possible question. 6 weeks of nutritious meals Rachel forced her to eat, and lawyer briefings, and sleepless nights reviewing documents until the words blurred together. 6 weeks of becoming someone new. The board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday. The day before, Maya stood in front of the mirror in her hotel room. Walter had insisted on putting her up somewhere nice, somewhere that would remind her she belonged in this world, and barely recognized herself. The woman looking back at her wore a designer maternity dress in deep blue. Her hair was professionally styled. Her makeup was subtle but perfect. She looked like she could walk into any boardroom in America and command attention. She looked like money. She felt like a fraud. You okay? Rachel asked from the doorway. No, Maya turned away from the mirror. What if they see through me? What if they know I don't belong? Girl, Rachel crossed the room and took Maya by the shoulders. Your father was born into this world. Your blood is as blue as any of theirs. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're finally becoming who you always were. I was a public school teacher a month ago, and now you're a billionaire heiress. Rachel grinned. Life comes at you fast. The boardroom was on the 40th floor of Blackwell Tower. Everything was glass and chrome and intimidation. A table long enough to land a plane on, windows that showed all of Manhattan spread out like a kingdom. 8 people in expensive suits, watching Maya walk in like they were evaluating livestock. Walter was at her side. He squeezed her elbow once. You've got this. She took her seat. For the next 2 hours, Maya answered questions. They asked about her education, public schools, state university, master's in education from a mid-tier program. They asked about her career. 12 years teaching middle school art, nothing impressive by their standards. They asked about her marriage, her pregnancy, her plans for the inheritance. She answered everything honestly. And when they asked about her father, she told them the truth. My father gave up billions of dollars so he could mop floors and eat ramen and come home smelling like pine cleaner every night. She looked each board member in the eye, and he was the happiest, most fulfilled person I've ever known. He taught me that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the lives you touch, the love you give, the people you lift up when the world pushes them down. She paused. If you approve my inheritance, I'm going to honor his legacy. I'm going to use this money to help people. Single mothers in crisis, children without opportunities, women who've been told they're not enough. Her voice strengthened. I know I don't look like what you expected. I didn't grow up in this world, but my father believed I could carry his legacy, and I intend to prove him right. Silence. Then the chairman, an elderly man with silver hair and sharp eyes, spoke. Let's vote, 7-2. Miss Blackwell. The chairman's use of her real name sent a shiver down Maya's spine. Welcome to the family. Your inheritance is approved for transition. Maya burst into tears. That night, she and Rachel celebrated. They found a nice restaurant, not too fancy, because Maya was still Maya, still a public school teacher in her heart, and ordered everything on the menu. So what are you going to do? Rachel asked, attacking her lobster with enthusiasm. Buy an island? Tell Derek to eat dirt from your private helicopter? Maya laughed. For the first time in weeks, the sound was genuine. I want to start a foundation. The idea had been growing since her conversation with Walter. For single mothers, for women in crisis, for people like me who've lost everything and don't know how to survive. Rachel raised her glass. To Henry Sinclair, the best dad who ever pretended to be poor. To Dad. For one perfect evening, Maya let herself believe the worst was over. She was wrong. The next morning, she woke to a knock on her hotel room door. She opened it expecting room service, maybe Walter with paperwork. Instead, she found an 82-year-old woman in Chanel. Cold eyes, perfect posture, diamonds at her ears that could fund a small country. Everything about her radiated power, control, and contempt. You must be Maya, the woman said. Her voice was like ice cracking. I'm Margaret Blackwell, your grandmother. Maya's blood froze. And I'm here to tell you that board vote means nothing. What? Margaret walked past Maya into the suite without waiting for an invitation. She looked around at the expensive furnishings with visible disdain. I hold controlling interest in Blackwell Energy, 51%, and I'm challenging my son's will. You're not getting a penny. You can't do that. Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. The board approved me. 7-2, the board advises, I decide. Margaret turned to face her granddaughter. Her eyes were the same brown as Henry's, but there was no warmth in them, only calculation and cold fury. My lawyers filed an emergency injunction this morning. All assets are frozen pending investigation into whether my son was of sound mind when he created those ridiculous conditions. He was perfectly sane. The doctors confirmed it. 3 separate evaluations. Doctors can be wrong. Margaret smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Doctors can be persuaded. What do you want? Maya asked. Why are you doing this? For the first time, something other than contempt flickered across Margaret's face. Something that might have been pain. My son abandoned his family for a woman who wasn't worth the dirt on his shoes. He spent 35 years living in poverty by choice, pretending we didn't exist, refusing every attempt at reconciliation. Her voice hardened, and now his daughter, who's never met me, never known me, never even knew I existed, thinks she can waltz in and claim his fortune? Over my dead body. She walked toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. I spent 35 years mourning my son while he was still alive, watching from a distance while he threw away everything our family built. I buried him in my heart long before he died. She looked back at Maya, and I will not let you profit from the choices that destroyed my family. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Maya stood frozen in the middle of the room. Back to zero. No, worse than zero. She'd been allowed to taste victory, allowed to believe for one shining moment that her father's plan had worked, that the fight was over. And now she understood. The fight was just beginning. Margaret Blackwell didn't just freeze the assets, she launched a full-scale war. Within a week of their confrontation, Maya's life began to disintegrate. First came the private investigators. She spotted them outside Rachel's apartment, photographing everyone who came and went. Then came the questions at her school district, calls from board members asking about her mental stability, her fitness to teach. Then came the media. Grifter granddaughter claims billionaire fortune, screamed one tabloid headline. Con artist or just desperate, asked another. A gossip site published photos of Maya in her Target maternity dress at the board meeting, contrasting them with pictures of Margaret in designer gowns. Maya lost her teaching job. It wasn't an official firing. The superintendent was very apologetic, very understanding. But the district couldn't handle the negative attention. The phone calls from parents, the reporters showing up at school events, leave of absence pending investigation, they called it, 24 years of teaching, generations of students she'd inspired, gone in an instant. And then Derek reappeared. He showed up at Rachel's apartment 7 weeks after walking out at the funeral, flowers in hand, remorse carefully arranged on his face. Maya, I made a terrible mistake. His voice was smooth, practiced. The same voice he'd used to close 1,000 sales deals. Brooke manipulated me. She targeted me, saw my weaknesses, exploited them. I was stressed about your father, about the pregnancy, about everything. She told me what I wanted to hear. Maya stood in the doorway, not letting him inside. And you believed her. I was weak. He looked down, the picture of shame. But I've seen the error of my ways, the news about your inheritance. It made me realize what I was throwing away. Not the money, you, us, our family. Maya almost laughed. We're divorced, Derek. We're separated. His eyes sharpened. Papers aren't finalized, which means legally I'm still your husband, and I'm entitled to half of any assets acquired during our marriage. There it was, the truth beneath the flowers. What do you want? 50%. His salesman's smile returned. Sign it over and I'll disappear. We can both move on with our lives. And if I don't, then I fight you in court. I've already been in contact with your grandmother's legal team. He stepped closer. They're very interested in supporting my case. You're working with Margaret? I'm protecting my interests. Sound familiar? That's what you should be doing. Maya felt something shift inside her, something that had been soft for too long, hardening into steel. Get out. Be reasonable, Maya. Get out of this hallway or I call the police. He left, but his threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire. 3 days later, Connor Davis arrived. Walter had hired him, a forensic accountant who specialized in finding the skeletons in financial closets. Middle-aged, quiet, with sad eyes that suggested he'd seen too much ugliness in the world. He spread documents across Rachel's kitchen table. Your husband has gambling debts, he said without preamble. $180,000 owed to people who don't accept payment plans. Maya's stomach dropped. I had no idea. He hid it well. Multiple accounts, shell companies, cash withdrawals that looked like business expenses. But here's the worst part. Connor's jaw tightened. He used your joint savings to cover some of it, cleaned you out about 8 months ago, and he forged your signature on a second mortgage for your apartment. What? Bank fraud, forgery, federal crimes. Maya's head spun. She thought about the past year, how Derek had always handled their finances, how he'd dismissed her questions with talk of investments and tax strategies. He'd stolen everything they had together, everything she'd saved, and he had the audacity to demand 50% of her inheritance. It got worse. A week later, Brooke Weston filed her own lawsuit. According to the court documents, Derek had promised Brooke marriage and financial support. He told her he was leaving Maya for good, that they would build a life together. When Brooke discovered he was trying to reconcile with Maya, specifically with Maya's money, she felt betrayed. So she sued Maya for alienation of affection, $20 million in damages. Let me get this straight, Rachel said when Maya showed her the filing. Your grandmother is suing you for the inheritance. Your ex-husband is suing you for half of everything. And his mistress is also suing you for stealing him back? That about covers it. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she started laughing. I'm sorry, she wheezed. I'm sorry, I know this isn't funny. But girl, you need to write a book after I survive this. When? Rachel's face grew serious. When you survive this. Because you're going to. And then you're going to make every single one of them regret the day they underestimated Henry Sinclair's daughter. Maya wished she shared Rachel's confidence. 3 lawsuits, no job, no accessible money, nearly 8 months pregnant. Her father had wanted her to fight for this, but he'd never told her the fight would be against everyone. Maya found her strength in her father's journal. She'd been reading it in fragments since his death. A page here, an entry there, whenever she could handle the reminder of what she'd lost. But now she read it cover to cover, looking out for something she couldn't name, She found it on page 47, entry dated the year Maya was born. Everyone thinks I gave up everything when I walked away from the Blackwell fortune. They think I sacrificed my future for love. They don't understand. I didn't give anything up. I gained everything that matters. But someday Maya will face a choice. Someday she'll have to decide whether to fight for what's hers or let the world beat her down. And I pray that when that day comes, she'll understand what I tried to teach her. True power isn't what you have. It's knowing you can survive, losing everything and rebuild. I'm making her earn this inheritance not because I don't love her. I'm making her earn it because I love her too much to let her be weak. Maya closed the journal. Her father hadn't just left her money. He'd left her a test, a crucible, a chance to become the person who deserved the life he'd protected for her. And she was done failing. The next morning she called a meeting. Walter Pemberton, Connor Davis, Rachel Torres, the 3 people she trusted most in the world, gathered around a table covered with documents and legal briefs and cold coffee. I'm done being a victim, Maya said. Her voice was steady in a way it hadn't been for weeks. I'm done reacting to what they do. It's time to go on offense. What did you have in mind? Walter asked. Derek first, Maya looked at Connor. You found evidence of fraud and forgery. Federal crimes. I did. Good, we use it. Not just as leverage, as a weapon. He forged my signature on bank documents. That's fraud. He stole money that was legally mine. That's theft. I want charges filed. Connor nodded slowly. Once we file, there's no going back. He'll be arrested, possibly convicted. Prison time. Good, Maya said again. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. Damn, girl, you sure? He divorced me at my father's funeral. He stole my savings. He's working with my grandmother to take my daughter's inheritance. Maya's hands were steady on the table. I'm sure. What about Brooke? Walter asked. Her lawsuit has no merit and she knows it. Maya shuffled through the documents. She's not suing me because she thinks she'll win. She's suing me because Margaret promised her something. Money, Connor confirmed. I found transfers from a Blackwell shell company to accounts Brooke controls. Looks like payments for cooperation. So we expose that too. Maya looked at Walter. Can we file for sanctions? Make her pay our legal fees? We can try. It's complicated, but yes. Good, do it. And Margaret? Rachel asked quietly. Maya was quiet for a moment. Margaret is the real enemy, but she's also my grandmother, my father's mother. She's trying to destroy you, Rachel pointed out, because she's hurt, because my father broke her heart and she never got over it. So what? We go easy on her because she has feelings? No. Maya shook her head. We don't go easy on anyone, but we need to be smart about this. Margaret has 50 years of experience fighting these kinds of battles. We're not going to beat her by playing her game. Then what's your plan? My father kept records. Everything. Maya pulled out the leather journal. Every conversation with Margaret's lawyers. Every attempted reconciliation she rejected. Every cruelty she inflicted on the woman he loved. And somewhere in those records, Maya continued, is something he was saving. Something he told me about, but I didn't understand at the time. Protection, he called it. Protection from what? I don't know yet. But he knew Margaret would come after me. He spent 35 years preparing for this moment. We need to find what he left behind. The counterattack began. Derek was first. Connor's evidence was airtight. The forged signatures, the stolen money, the wire fraud, every transaction documented, every crime verified. Maya requested a meeting at Neutral Ground, a law office downtown. Derek arrived looking smug. His lawyer looked expensive. Maya slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" Derek asked, barely glancing at it. "Evidence?" Maya's voice was ice. "Bank fraud, forgery, wire fraud. 5 years federal minimum, maybe 10 depending on the judge." Derek opened the folder. The color drained from his face as he flipped through page after page of documentation. "You can't prove any of this. Every signature has been authenticated by 3 separate experts," Maya said. "The wire transfers are time-stamped and tracked. Your offshore account in the Caymans has been documented by the IRS." She watched his mask crumble. "What do you want?" His voice shook. "Sign away all claims to my inheritance. Sign away all custody claims to our daughter. Disappear from my life and never contact me again. And if I don't, my lawyer forwards this file to the FBI in 1 hour." Maya leaned forward. "And Derek?" "They don't negotiate." His lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear. Derek's jaw worked. His hands trembled. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Derek signed everything. One down, Maya thought, as she walked out into the afternoon sunshine. 2 to go. Brooke crumbled faster than Derek. Once Connor documented the payments from Margaret's shell company, the judge didn't need much convincing. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Brooke was ordered to pay Maya's legal fees. Her reputation in the business community, so carefully cultivated, disintegrated overnight. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who'd conspired with a bitter grandmother to steal an inheritance from a pregnant widow. But Margaret was different. Margaret was patient, powerful, protected by 50 years of wealth and influence. Maya needed something bigger than court filings and legal maneuvers. She needed her father's protection. She found it 3 weeks later, buried in a box of her father's old papers that Mrs. Patterson had been storing in her basement for 20 years. A manila envelope, sealed. On the front, in her father's handwriting, "For Maya, when she's ready." Inside was a court document from 1984. And when Maya read it, she understood everything. Maya never got to use her father's protection, because Margaret struck first. 2 weeks before Maya's due date, while Walter was preparing motions and Connor was documenting Margaret's abuses, the police arrived at Rachel's apartment. 2 officers, badges, handcuffs. Maya Sinclair, one of them said, his voice official and cold, "You're under arrest for filing a fraudulent inheritance claim and financial elder abuse of Henry Sinclair." "What?" Maya's hand went to her belly. The baby kicked. "This is a mistake. I didn't. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Rachel was screaming. The neighbors were watching. Someone was filming on their phone. Maya was handcuffed and let out of the building like a criminal. Margaret had manufactured evidence. That's what Walter explained hours later, after he'd posted bail, after Maya had spent 6 hours in a holding cell trying not to go into premature labor. She hired experts to create documents suggesting you coerced your father during his final days, forged your fingerprints onto falsified inheritance paperwork, paid witnesses to claim they saw you pressuring Henry to change his will. That's impossible. I was barely conscious when he died. I didn't pressure anyone. We know that. Walter's face was grim. But Margaret has resources we don't. She can make lies look like truth, at least long enough to cause damage. What kind of damage? The kind that was already happening. While Maya sat in jail, CPS had arrived at the hospital where she'd been scheduled to give birth. "We've received a report that the mother may be unfit," the social worker had said. "We're required to investigate." And 3 days later, when Maya went into labor 2 weeks early, stress, the doctor said, though they didn't need to explain what caused the stress, the investigation was still ongoing. She gave birth to Grace Eleanor Sinclair in a delivery room surrounded by lawyers and social workers instead of family. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Her father's eyes, her mother's chin. Perfect. And 2 hours after Maya first held her daughter, they took Grace away. "Temporary protective custody," the social worker explained, her voice professionally sympathetic, "until the investigation is complete and the criminal charges are resolved." "You can't do this," Maya sobbed. "She's my baby. I haven't done anything wrong." "Ma'am, the charges against you are serious. We have to prioritize the child's safety." They pried Grace from Maya's arms. She screamed until her voice gave out, until there was nothing left but silence and emptiness and a pain so deep it felt like death. The 72 hours that followed were the worst of Maya's life. Hour 12. A judge, citing the pending criminal charges and CPS investigation, granted temporary custody of Grace to Derek Mitchell. Derek, who had signed away his parental rights weeks earlier, Derek, whose lawyers successfully argued that the document had been signed under duress and was therefore invalid. He immediately transferred custody to Brooke Weston, Brooke, who had lost her lawsuit, Brooke, who had been publicly humiliated, Brooke, who now held Maya's newborn daughter like a trophy. She posted a photo on Instagram. Maya saw it on Rachel's phone. Grace in Brooke's arms, tiny, innocent, helpless. Caption: sometimes the best mothers are the ones who step up when biological ones fail. Hashtag new chapter. Hashtag protecting innocence. Maya threw the phone against the wall so hard the screen shattered. Hour 36. The criminal case was proceeding faster than anyone expected. Margaret's lawyers had paid for expedited hearings, expedited evidence processing, expedited everything. Money could buy speed, apparently. Money could buy a lot of things. Walter worked around the clock, but Margaret had 10 lawyers for every motion he filed. Every time he made progress, she blocked it. Every time he found an angle, she closed it. And the expert witness who testified about Maya's fingerprints on the forged documents? He was convincing, professional, detailed. He was also a fraud who'd been paid by Margaret 3 times before. But proving that took time, and Maya was running out of time. Hour 72. Brooke filed a restraining order. She claimed Maya had threatened her. There were witnesses. Paid for by Margaret, Maya was certain. There were text messages, fabricated, she knew. There was a documented pattern of harassment. Lies, all lies. The judge granted the order. Maya could not come within 500 feet of her own daughter. She sat in the cheap motel room Walter had found for her. Her credit cards had been frozen. Her bank accounts had been seized. She had nothing, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. No money, no guambama, no baby, no family. Accused of crimes she didn't commit. Framed by her own grandmother. Separated from her child by people who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle. This was rock bottom. This was what her father had warned her about. The wolves, the fight that would reveal who she really was, and right now she felt like nothing. Rachel found her on the floor, not crying anymore. There weren't any tears left. Just emptiness and exhaustion and a despair so profound it felt like drowning. Rachel sat down beside her, pressed a container of soup into her hands. You need to eat, not hungry. I don't care. Eat anyway. Maya managed 3 spoonfuls before putting it down. I can't do this anymore, Rachel. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm not strong enough. Look at me. Rachel's tone left no room for argument. Maya, look at me. Maya looked. Your father was the smartest man I never met, Rachel said. He knew this would be hard. He made it hard on purpose. Because he knew you could handle it. He knew you would rise. What would he say right now if he was here? Maya closed her eyes. Her father's voice, faded but clear in her memory, the last conversation they'd had before he died. When you hit bottom, look for the cracks. That's where the light gets in. That's where the truth hides. She opened her eyes. She'd been looking at her problems. The lawsuits, the arrest, the custody battle, the overwhelming weight of everything stacked against her. She hadn't been looking for the cracks in their defenses. I need to see the evidence files again, Maya said. Now we're talking. Rachel pulled her to her feet. What are we looking for? Margaret's been doing this for 50 years. She thinks she's invincible. Maya's voice strengthened. But everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has cracks. We're going to find hers. Maya found the crack at 3 in the morning. She'd been going through every document in her case, every piece of evidence, every filing, every motion, every expert witness report, looking for something that didn't fit. And there it was, on page 47 of the fingerprint analysis. Dr. Gerald Morrison, forensic document specialist, expert witness extraordinaire. Maya had seen that name before. She pulled up her father's records, the ones Connor had been digitizing for weeks, and searched. There, 1992, a lawsuit between Blackwell Energy and a former business partner. The expert witness who authenticated key documents, Dr. Gerald Morrison. The outcome, the case was overturned on appeal when the documents were proven to be fabricated. She kept searching. 2003, a family dispute over a subsidiary company. Expert witness, Dr. Gerald Morrison. Outcome, sealed settlement after allegations of evidence tampering. 2015, a shareholder's lawsuit Margaret had quashed. Expert witness, same name, same man. Maya called Walter at dawn. Morrison has testified for Margaret 3 times before, she said. At least 2 of those cases involved fabricated evidence. One was overturned on appeal. Walter's voice sharpened. I'll file for discovery immediately. If we can prove a pattern of paying for false testimony, we can destroy her credibility. And the criminal case against me collapses. It's not that simple. We need documentation. Proof of payments. Connor can find it. We also need something bigger. Walter paused. Something that will make Margaret back down entirely. Because even if we beat her in court, she'll just keep coming. She has unlimited resources and unlimited grudges. Maya looked at the manila envelope she'd found in Mrs. Patterson's basement. I have something, she said, but I'm not sure what it means yet. What is it? A court document from 1984. Something my father saved. She read it over the phone, so Walter was quiet for a long moment. My God, he finally said. Henry, you brilliant bastard. You know what this is? It's everything, Walter said. It's the key to ending this war. The document was a psychiatric evaluation. After Henry left the family in 1983, Margaret had petitioned to have him declared mentally incompetent. She wanted control of his trust fund, control of his share of the company. A judge ordered evaluations of both parties. Henry was declared perfectly sane, competent, capable, but Margaret's evaluation told a different story. Narcissistic personality disorder, financial obsession disorder, pattern of controlling and manipulative behavior. The judge had not only denied Margaret's petition, he'd recommended that she be removed from the Blackwell board entirely. Called her, in writing, a danger to family assets and relationships. The Blackwell lawyers had buried this document, sealed the records, paid off everyone who knew, but Henry had kept a copy, hidden it away for 35 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Maya didn't go through lawyers for what came next. She drove to Connecticut, to the Blackwell estate. 47 rooms of old money and older grudges, set on a hill like a monument to everything her father had rejected. Security tried to stop her at the gate. Tell Mrs. Blackwell I have the 1984 psychiatric evaluation, Maya said. She'll want to see me. They made a call, waited, made another call. The gates opened and Maya found her grandmother in a sitting room that cost more than most people's houses. Oil paintings, antique furniture, a fire crackling despite the warm October weather. Margaret didn't look surprised to see her. You found it, the old woman said. I always wondered if Henry kept a copy. He kept everything. Maya sat down across from her grandmother. Every document, every letter, every piece of evidence of what you did to him, what you tried to do. I tried to save my son from a mistake. You tried to control him, and when he refused to be controlled, you tried to destroy him. Something flickered in Margaret's eyes. Pain, maybe, or just calculation. He was my only child, she said. My heir. Everything I'd built, everything our family represented, he was supposed to carry it forward, and he threw it all away. For a woman who wasn't worth the dirt on his shoes. She was worth everything, Maya said quietly. She was worth more than all your money and all your power and all your control. She was worth his whole life, and you couldn't forgive him for seeing that. Margaret's mask cracked. For just a moment, she wasn't the corporate titan, the ruthless matriarch, the woman who'd spent decades destroying anyone who crossed her. She was an old woman who'd lost her son. I just wanted him to come home, Margaret whispered. Every year on his birthday, every Christmas. I sent letters, I sent gifts. I hired people to watch over him, make sure he was safe. I know, Maya's voice softened. He kept those too. He never answered. Because you didn't want him back. You wanted to own him. There's a difference. Silence stretched between them. What do you want? Margaret finally asked. If you're going to release that document, you don't need my permission. I don't want to release it. Maya leaned forward. I want to end this, all of it. The lawsuits, the charges, the custody fight. She pulled out her phone, showed Margaret a photograph. Grace, 3 weeks old, small, imperfect, and helpless. You have a great-granddaughter, Maya said. You've spent 35 years alone, grieving a son who was still alive. And now he's dead, and you're spending whatever time you have left trying to destroy the only family you have left. Margaret stared at the photo. She looks like him, she whispered. Like Henry. She does. What are you proposing? Maya took a breath. You drop the charges, drop the lawsuits. Help me get Grace back. And in return, she paused. In return, I let you be part of our lives. Not in control, not running things, but present. Part of a family again. Why would you do that? After everything I've done? Because my father forgave you. Every year on your birthday, he lit a candle for you. He told me about it the night he died. He never stopped loving you. He just couldn't be what you wanted him to be. Margaret's hands trembled. I've made so many mistakes. Then stop making them. Long silence. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour. Margaret picked up her phone. Get me Richard, she said. Yes, now, tell him to drop everything. A pause. All of it, she said. The charges, the lawsuits, the custody filing. Everything. She ended the call. Looked at Maya. The board will reinstate your inheritance, she said. Full transfer of assets within 30 days. And Grace? Margaret closed her eyes. I'll have her home by tonight. Maya wanted to feel triumph, victory, the satisfaction of winning. Instead, she just felt tired and sad and older than she'd ever felt before. She stood to leave. Maya, Margaret called. She turned. Your father was a better man than I deserved. I see that now. I saw it then too. I just couldn't admit it. Maya nodded once. Then be worthy of his memory, she said, starting now. She walked out. And behind her, for the first time in 50 years, Margaret Blackwell began to cry. The weeks that followed moved fast, with Margaret's resources turned from destruction to cooperation. The fabricated evidence unraveled rapidly. Dr. Morrison, confronted with proof of his history of perjury, folded immediately and admitted to falsifying the fingerprint analysis. Margaret's private investigator was arrested for evidence tampering, and when the investigator started talking to save himself, he revealed everything, including Derek's involvement. He was part of it from the beginning, Walter told Maya. Margaret's team paid him $50,000 to pursue the custody angle. They promised him a percentage of any settlement. Maya felt sick, but not surprised. Derek was arrested on a Tuesday morning. Conspiracy, fraud, forgery, bank fraud, wire fraud. The federal charges Maya had originally threatened were now very real. She visited him in county jail 3 weeks later. The man on the other side of the glass partition looked nothing like the confident salesman she'd married. His eyes were hollow. His skin was gray. The orange jumpsuit hung on his frame like he'd lost 20 pounds. Why? Maya asked. That was the only question that mattered. I loved you. I would have stayed with you through anything. I know. Derek's voice was hoarse. That's what scared me. I don't understand. He was quiet for a moment, then he laughed. A broken sound. You were too good, Maya. Being with you made me feel like I could never measure up. You had this peace about you, this certainty about who you were, and every day I woke up next to you, I felt like a fraud. So you cheated on me? So I looked for someone who made me feel powerful instead of small. Someone who was impressed by what I had instead of what I was. And then your father got sick, and you were so focused on him, and I convinced myself I deserved better, that you were holding me back. He pressed his palm against the glass. I was wrong about everything. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too small to appreciate it. Maya looked at his hand, at the man she'd loved, at the stranger he'd become. I hope you find peace someday, Derek. I really do. She stood up. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. Maya nodded. Goodbye, Derek. She walked out, didn't look back. Brooke Weston's downfall was more public. exposed as a conspirator in the custody scheme, connected to the evidence tampering through documented payments. Her carefully cultivated image disintegrated overnight. She was fired from her position. Her professional network evaporated. Her social standing, so important to her, crumbled. She posted a tearful apology video on Instagram. It got 47 views, most of them hate watches. Rachel watched it 3 times, laughing harder each time. Girls crying about how she's the real victim. Rachel wheezed. "Ma'am, you posted a photo of yourself holding a baby you helped steal." The audacity is Olympic level. But Maya couldn't enjoy the schadenfreude because she had Grace back. The handoff happened at family court. Social workers, lawyers, paperwork. But all Maya saw was her daughter. Grace was 6 weeks old now. She'd gotten bigger. She looked around with curious dark eyes, not yet understanding the war that had been fought over her tiny life. Maya held her close and cried. "I'm never letting you go again," she whispered into her daughter's soft hair. "Never, I promise." 6 months later, Maya stood at a podium in downtown Manhattan. Behind her, a banner read, "The Henry Sinclair Foundation." Before her, a crowd of reporters, philanthropists, and the social workers who would carry out her father's vision. "My father," Maya said into the microphone, "spent 35 years mopping floors, not because he had to, because he wanted to teach me that worth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in the lives you touch, the love you give, the people you lift up when the world pushes them down." She paused, looked at the faces before her. Rachel in the front row, crying openly. Walter beside her, dignified but clearly moved. Connor, who'd become a trusted friend through all of this. Mrs. Patterson, who had helped keep her father's secrets for decades. And in the back, sitting quietly, Margaret Blackwell. "This foundation is for every woman who's ever been told she wasn't enough," Maya continued. "Every mother who's fought for her children. Every person who hit bottom and thought there was no way back up." Her voice strengthened. "My father used to say, when you hit bottom, look for the cracks. That's where the light gets in. That's where the truth hides." She smiled. "I found my cracks. I found my light. And I'm here to help others find theirs." The foundation launched with a $500 million endowment. First-year impact. 1,200 women helped. Rent paid. Legal aid provided. Job training completed. Lives rebuilt. First grantee, Mrs. Dorothy Patterson, whose daughter needed medical treatment they couldn't afford. First scholarship, the Eleanor Sinclair Award for first-generation college students in nursing. First crisis center, built in Millbrook, Ohio, in the neighborhood where Henry Sinclair had mopped floors for 3 decades. 1 year later, Grace was walking. Maya watched her toddle across the garden of what had once been the Blackwell estate. It was her home now. Not because she needed the space, but because her father had grown up here. Because there was something poetic about raising his granddaughter in the place he'd fled. Margaret sat on a bench nearby, watching her great-granddaughter with eyes that had finally learned to be soft. "She's perfect," Margaret said. "She is. I wasted so much time. You have time now. Use it." Margaret had funded an additional $200 million for the foundation, anonymously. Maya had found out anyway. Neither of them mentioned it. Some gifts don't need acknowledgement. That evening, after Grace was asleep and the house was quiet, Maya found a letter in her mailbox. Handwritten, no return address, postmarked from the state prison. From Derek. She almost threw it away without reading. But something made her open it. "Maya, I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know you probably won't even read this, but I need to tell you something. Margaret's investigator talked to me about a lot of things when he was recruiting me for the custody scheme. He told me things he probably shouldn't have. I didn't think about it at the time. I was too focused on the money, but lately I can't stop thinking about it. He talked about your father's death, about the hospital, about how convenient it was that Henry died when he did, before he could tell you everything himself. He mentioned a nurse named Linda Marshall. Said she was paid to adjust your father's medication schedule, to make sure he didn't have as much time as the doctors predicted. I don't know if it's true. The investigator was a liar about everything else. But I thought you should know. Your father might not have had to die that fast. I'm sorry. For everything. Derek Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she called Walter. I need you to look into something, she said. It's about my father's death. A long pause. What did you find? Maya looked out the window. The stars were coming out over the estate. Somewhere in the house, Grace murmured in her sleep. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But I need to know the truth. I'll make some calls in the morning. No, Maya's voice was steel. Tonight. Start tonight. She hung up and looked at the photograph on her desk. Her father at her college graduation. Proud, happy, alive. She thought the fight was over. But some endings are really beginnings, and some truths take a lifetime to find. She picked up the phone again. Called Rachel. I need your help with something. Always. What's up? We're going to find out what really happened to my father. Someone may have killed him, and if they did, Maya looked at Grace's baby monitor, at the photo of Henry, at the empire she'd inherited, and the foundation she'd built, and the family she'd created from the ashes of betrayal. If they did, she finished quietly, I'm going to make sure they answer for it. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. An owl called in the distance. And in a quiet house full of love and secrets and new beginnings, a woman who'd lost everything found the strength to keep fighting. Because that's what her father had taught her. That's what he'd always known. She was never alone, never poor, never powerless. She just hadn't known it yet. And now that she did, now that she understood who she was and what she was capable of, she would never stop fighting for the truth, for her father, for her daughter, for herself.